Kevin Roberts, the president of the Heritage Foundation and the host of the Kevin Roberts Show, joins us now. Kevin, great to have you back with us, sir.
Vince, it's always a pleasure. You know, I didn't think I was going to give the vice president credit for anything, but she's right about one thing. And amid all of those lies, I do think conservatives are united if you follow the messaging of President Trump around eliminating the Department of Education. Yeah. So at least she got that really good idea right.
Well, yeah, because, you know, parents should actually be able to dictate what kind of education their kids get. It should be at the local level. You shouldn't have the federal government lording over every child in America.
No, our system is so outdated, and in fact, Vice President Harris may personify all of the terrible aspects of our education system.
Let's get into what there's a bunch of pieces here. So I want to start with just what Project 2025 is. You and I have had this discussion. We've talked about this on the air before, but as I understand it, it's essentially two components. It's a bunch of policy proposals from conservative organizations here in the United States, patriotic organizations. They'd like the next president of the United States to consider these proposals. And two, it's a list of personnel of patriots who are ready to work on day one to support an incoming administration that cares about the country. Do I have that right?
A+. And I think the reason the left has gone apoplectic about this is twofold. First, they have nothing else to talk about, not just because of the incompetence and incapability of President Biden, but also because of their record. I mean, their record in contrast to Trump's policy achievements is abysmal. If you think about the economy, energy, foreign policy, every realm that you would consider, their record is worse. But the second thing is, and this really speaks to the long-term objective of Project 2025, which is to be of service to the next president and hopefully many presidents after him. And that is, he's going to make the decision on the policy and the personnel, but the conservative movement has never been this unified around a set of policies, which actually have, at least speaking for most of those items in the project, huge, overwhelming support from the center right in this country. And I think the left has really gotten scared about how organized and cohesive this project is.
Well, so for instance, one of the things you heard Kamala Harris say just there was that the plan in Project 2025 is to cut Social Security. Is that the plan? Is that one of the big planks here?
That's 100% false. If you go into the text of the plan, which you can see at project2025.org, and you do a search for Social Security, you will see that is utterly and totally false.
Utterly and totally false. Do conservatives believe in saving Social Security? Is that maybe the plan?
Well, of course we do. And in fact, there are great ideas across the conservative movement. Heck, there are even some organizations and people on the center left who understand that down the road we've got to deal with Social Security so that we can keep recipients whole, right, and so that we can fulfill the promise we have. Harris is really getting in the way of some of those good ideas.
Okay. All right. So I agree with you. I think that, you know, one of the things that's happening here is the left is desperate for literally anything that they can get a hold of and say, see, this is a bad thing. And they're hoping that their voters, their base, doesn't actually read through any of this Project 2025 for what it is. And I've seen tons of lefties all across social media. They're scared to death. They think Project 2025 is some sort of authoritarian hellscape en route. But I don't know. I do feel like that the tyranny is kind of already here, if I'm being honest. It's like, really? You're scared of tyranny? Well, you should be scared of what we're going through right now.
Well, I think that speaks to two lessons from this whole flap over the last couple of weeks concerning Project 2025. The first is a truism for conservatives especially. If you're taking flack, you're over the target. And so conservatives need to keep in mind that when you're taking that flack from the radical left, they're telling you what they're sensitive about, and they're sensitive about it for the second reason, which is that the ultimate objective of Project 2025 is to be a corrective to the overreach of federal power that the left has concentrated in D.C. over the last 50 years.
Yes.
And so that's really what they're worried about, because it is directly targeting the centralized power they have practically perfected, especially during the Obama and Biden presidencies.
There's a good example of this. This is actually really funny. Today, Ben Shapiro, our colleague here on WMAL, was testifying before Congress, and Congressman Eric Swalwell tried to turn that hearing into a Project 2025 argument. And it went very poorly for Congressman Swalwell. Take a listen to this.
And the country has, in the last couple of weeks, talked a lot about and Googled Project 2025. It's one of the most Googled search terms right now. And you're not going to get any censorship from me. So I just wanted to know, from your perspective, I think it would help us understand on just like a scale of 0 to 100%, how much do you support Project 2025?
I think, like President Trump, I haven't looked all that deeply at Project 2025, but it seems that Democrats on this committee, sort of like Peter Pan and Tinkerbell, if they say Project 2025 enough, their presidential candidate becomes alive again.
And so, well, let's just talk about pieces of it, and I guess you can tell me if you support it. You probably want less bureaucracy, right?
I do.
I want less bureaucracy. You want more efficiency.
I do.
I want more efficiency. You want taxpayer money spent wisely.
I do. Congrats on becoming a Republican.
Yeah. Yeah. My parents would be proud.
I mean, this is amazing. I don't know. How many rakes can this guy step on in his political career? It's like every time he opens his mouth, Kevin Roberts. But Eric Swalwell's saying, look at them. They want less bureaucracy. Oh, that sounds awful.
You know what the amazing thing is, beyond just the great humor and masterclass that Ben Shapiro has there, is the more the left spends time and money trying to, quote unquote, expose Project 2025, and people come to the website, you see them commenting, well, gosh, I may not agree with 100% of this, but I agree with the majority of it, and it's totally normal. It's a return to common sense, and I'm kind of glad that I read about it. And so, as it often is the case, the left will always overplay their hand. They've done it in this case, so much so, Vince, I'm not sure that you've seen this news today. We unearthed that some of the ads that the Biden campaign has done online in their digital campaign against Project 2025 have been in Mexico, which tells you everything you need to know about them counting, the Biden campaign counting on illegal aliens voting in this election.
Yeah, as all but 5 Democrats just moments ago voted to say that you shouldn't have to be a U.S. citizen to vote in American elections. So it is crystal clear where their loyalties lie, and it's not with advancing the needs and concerns of American citizens, Kevin.
No, it isn't. And of course, the radical left, anyone who's trying to concentrate power and hide the football, hates sunshine. They hate transparency.
Yeah.
What the American people are telling us, not just conservatives, but as you know well because of what you do every day, people in the center and even a growing number of people on the center left are saying, we just want our country back. We just want to wake up in a normal country, and I think that's ultimately the goal of Project 2025.
I do also want to reflect on something what's unusual about this project is normally in Washington you don't lay out policy prescriptions before elections. That's forbidden. You're not supposed to do that, and the reason for that is because then the other side can then attack you. It's the reason why for so many years when Republicans would say, we got to repeal and replace Obamacare, they wouldn't actually tell you what the replacement was, because the last thing you want to do is draw a line in the sand and say, this is what we're interested in doing, and then give the other side a chance to attack it. So one of the features here, if we're being honest, Kevin Roberts, which of course we are, is this is just unusual in Washington for anybody to come up with policy proposals ahead of an election.
It is unusual. We knew when we did that, speaking on behalf of all the 110 organizations that are part of it, that the left at some point would go apoplectic, but there's an advantage there, which is to see how they would react now, which gives us the opportunity to lay out the plan. But let me make this important point real briefly, and that is the reason for doing that early is because our base, the conservative grassroots who are united around our standard bearer, President Trump, we're saying that in addition to the great leadership and record of President Trump, we also want to see what a possible governing agenda will look like. And I think having that plan has been very unifying for the conservative base, and I think it's going to bode well, not just for President Trump, but for conservatives up and down the ballot this November.
Okay, so let's talk about President Trump specifically, because clearly what he's looking at in the political landscape is certainly a lot of advantages right now. You have Joe Biden in his campaign self-immolating. President Trump, his message is very appealing. People are comparing the two campaigns, having the two candidates having lived under both of their presidencies and going, man, I really preferred the Trump years. These are all things working to Trump's advantage. But in terms of the things he can't control, the outside stuff, the Biden campaign, as you noted, Kevin Roberts, has seized on Project 2025, distorted it beyond recognition, and is campaigning against it as if it's an extension specifically of Trump's policies. And that has led Trump himself to distance himself to some extent from Project 25 this past week. He claimed on Truth Social that he, quote, knows nothing about Project 2025. He says he has no idea who's behind it, and then he went on to wish the people who are involved in the project well. Can you talk about, first of all, your reaction when you see President Trump say this and what you envision as being behind it tactically?
Well, I think it's the sign of a great leader who understands he's in a terrific political news cycle. He's run a really good campaign from start up to this point, and the left's mischaracterization of Project 2025 had become a liability. I think we've seen that really turn around in the last few days since that statement. So no hard feelings from any of us at Project 2025 about the statement, because we understand Trump is the standard bearer and he's making a political, tactical decision there. But the second thing is we also have to understand that it's an opportunity for us to be able to clarify and explain. The media, including some left of center outlets and shows, have given us a lot of opportunities to clarify and explain. They don't cover it fairly, but the really interesting thing that's happened since last Friday when President Trump made that statement is that we have been able to go out and explain all of the falsehoods, just outright lies, mostly from the president and the vice president, and more Americans are realizing, I really like this idea. This is a good set of responsible, rational plans, and ultimately the politics are going to work out because this campaign has been so favorable for President Trump, in part because of his clarity, but also because the American people are ready for a return to normal, which we experienced when he was in office.
And this week, you saw that the Republican agenda was put out, which will be introduced, of course, officially next week at the Republican National Convention. We see some reporting that President Trump himself had a hand in writing it and edited it, and it's in all capital letters, which indicates it probably was actually Trump's writing. And it's out now. To what extent would you say that it synthesizes in any way with Project 25? Are there elements that you feel like, man, I wish they had included this? I noticed that there wasn't, some sort of passionate defense of life built into it, which I would have liked to see. How do you view the policies that they put out versus what Project 2025 is proposing?
Well, the overlap is tremendous. In fact, if you compare three documents, Project 2025, the Republican platform, which President Trump had a really strong hand in, which is good in terms of his political senses and positions, as well as the policy agenda that's on his campaign website, Agenda 47. The overlap, as you might imagine, is significant. There are some quibbles and differences of opinion here and there, which not only is okay, but it's actually good. We're going to be able to sort those out once the presidential administration declares what their priorities are. But the key thing is this. If President Trump is elected, regardless of what percentage of Project 2025 he adopts, uses, decides not to use, the people he hires, right, what's going to happen is that the border will be closed, the economy will be revitalized, the Green New Deal will come to an end, we will have tremendous energy, not just consumption, but production. And I think what you're going to see is the beginning of a golden era of conservative reform, not just because of President Trump, although he deserves most of the credit, but because the rest of the conservative movement has realized this is the moment, if we have the leader in the plan, that we're able to begin to undo all of the wreckage of the radical left of the last several decades.
And then on the personnel side of things, which is what you're talking about here, all the Americans who want to contribute to this great restoration of our country, do you get the impression that that an incoming Trump administration is going to be relying, at least in part, on this database of great personnel that you've put together?
Without being presumptuous, knowing that the president and his advisors are going to make those decisions, the quality of those people, more than 10,000 highly credentialed people, very aligned with how Trump sees the world. They're great American conservatives, most of them from outside Washington, will likely be offered roles in the administration. That's ultimately up to the president and his advisors, obviously. But these are people who are saying, I'm willing to be of service for your agenda for this country, just like you are as our leader. And I can't do anything but think that that's going to work out well for many of them.
Yeah, and at the bare minimum, they're not going to undermine them like so many others did in the past. Thank you very much. Kevin Roberts from the Heritage Foundation, sir. Always nice to talk to you. Really appreciate that.